With only 1 hour per day, I'm taking on miniature hobby's greatest challenge ever. Time. Time is a resource, but how do you make use of it when you have work, school, partners, and a whole myriad of other more important things to do with your time? So before we even begin this project, we need to come up with a plan so that we can use our time effectively and know exactly what we're going to do moving forwards. This is Cursed Crusader Arts. This is the Slaves to Darkness Spearhead from Warhammer Age of Sigmar. It has 17 miniatures including 10 Chaos Warriors, 5 Chaos Knights, a Chaos Lord, and a Chaos Chariot that is complex enough to be a multi-part project all by itself. But first things first, we're going to divide up this box by its units, and seeing as I've never built or painted this army, my priority is to ensure that I get familiar with the most basic elements of this army, and to do that I'm going to start with the Chaos Warriors. These heavily armoured foot soldiers are the backbone of this entire spearhead and army, and so it provides the foundations of everything that we need to understand moving forwards. Next, we need a theme so our army looks like a coherent unit. It doesn't matter if we have a warrior next to a knight or the leader with the chariot. Everything needs to look like it belongs to the same army, and I have the perfect idea. One of the games that was a staple for me 5 years ago was For Honor, and it still holds a special place in my heart. Armoured knights, Vikings and samurai duking it out for control of territory, and at the centre of the story, the brutal Blackstone Legion. Their dark metal armour plates and orange details isn't too far away from the original black and red paint scheme of the Slaves to Darkness box set. The next thing we're going to change is all of this trim. The Blackstone Legion scavenge for resources from their conquered foes and recruit any survivors that have proved themselves as worthy warriors in the eyes of their leader. But we will keep some of the decorative elements, like sculpted skulls, torn flesh, and all of the cloth elements. However, I want to do away with the chaos arrows that we're used to seeing, and it will all be painted with the same dark metallic colours to show that this is a relatively utilitarian mindset. One of the most distinctive elements of the Blackstone Legion is the individuality of their leaders, each one with their own distinctive weapons, armour and decoration. To simulate this, I want to ensure that no two warriors look the same. Many of the parts in the kits are themed, specifically designed to go together, and instead of swapping them around like I usually do for kit bashes, I'm going to stick to this original concept. But I have a bit of a confession. Before I came up with the idea of a diary for a mini hobbyist, I had already begun putting together the miniatures in this box set. I had built 3 of the 10 warriors and put together the basic foundations of 6 bases. Now, I did promise that I would be transparent about everything that I do, including any mistakes that I made. And in order to keep that promise, I have to make you aware of this. To ensure that we have an accurate timescale for this entire project, we're going to use the first hour to build as many warriors as we can, and use that information to work out roughly how much time was spent prior to this experiment. This begins with my first Chaos Warrior that has a spiked shield and helmet. This is a particularly no-nonsense, cruel-looking man. He has no qualms smashing his foes down with his shield and pounding them into the ground with the edged mace that I've equipped him with. Second is the unit's leader, the Chaos Champion. Armed with sword and shield, he's an imposing figure. I removed the detailing trim on the helmet and shield, smoothing it down. I have, however, left the detail on the sword, including the runes. I feel that unit and army leaders can afford to have a little more detail than their subordinates. Finally, the third warrior has a shield on his back, mostly covering a flayed, scaled skin. The trim is removed, and I decide that this time he's going to wield a halberd. These polearm weapons were originally used to defend allies or grapple mounted foes. Incorporating these weapons into the squad gives a well-rounded look and shows that this army isn't just a bunch of bloodthirsty lunatics, but a cold, efficient and ruthless killing machine. For the bases, I'm going to be using bricks. For Honor mostly focuses on duels and castle sieges, and I want to lean into the latter for my bases. Cobblestones and Gothic stone arches are going to provide the perfect bases that we need for our army without being too distracting from the miniatures themselves. And now it's time that I finally start on the first hour of this project. We're starting off with the classic combo, sword and board. The body of the Chaos Warrior is stepping forwards with confidence and has stitched skin over his long travelling cloak, so he's a pretty mean one. So, a sword with a spiked vambrace can tell quite the story. For instance, I could easily imagine him backhanding someone across the face with his spikes, tearing into the flesh. To add to this further, a horned helmet with a cut over one eye is used, and then I equip him with a relatively plain shield. Originally, the shield has a thick divider down the centre, but I'm going to carve it away. Don't be afraid to make the changes because we're going to use the paint to fill in the space in the future. I use my hobby knife to carve away the bulk of the plastic detail, and then scrape the remainder away. A metal file can also remove a lot of material if you're heavy-handed, but if you are careful with it and use it lightly, you can smooth off the surface and then use some plastic glue to melt the surface and remove the imprint left behind by the file. I want to maintain that utilitarian and scavenger look, so I'm not worried about a slightly lumpy and jagged appearance. For the sword, I remove the Chaos Arrow. It isn't really necessary on the standard warriors, so I'm reserving that detail only for the squad's leader. And there he is, a great warrior adorned with flayed flesh and simple but effective weapons, and just a little bit of brutality with that spiked vambrace. Now, this one soldier has taken up about 2/3 of my time, but there's going to be no wasted energy because when you have a very busy life, every second counts. Keeping in theme with the flayed flesh, I'm ramping it up to the next level. More flayed skin, but this time, it has faces. This is a particularly grisly display, so I want him to be looking as aggressive as possible. The arrow is removed from the chest plate and the hatchet that I've chosen to give him. A horned helmet can be tilted forward to look like a charging bull, and the cloak flaring out to the side adds that element of motion. There's trim on the bottom of the shield and there are still mold lines to remove, but unfortunately I'm out of time for today's session. In an hour I've managed to fully assemble one Chaos Warrior and partially assemble a second one. Now this isn't a lot at face value, but remember everything that we've achieved today. We're not just building these out of the box. A lot of trim was removed and then smoothed out. On top of that, the soldiers are themed individually, and we have a plan for the entire project moving forward. With the other 3 warriors and 6 bases that were built before this project began, I would say that they took an additional 2 hours or so, bringing our total up to 3 hours for the entire project so far. So if you enjoyed this, subscribe for future uploads, but most importantly, make things, have fun, and I'll see you next time on Cursed Crusader Arts.